President Trump outlining his aggressive to-do list this week to the nation, from a massive tax overhaul to repealing and replacing Obamacare to building a border wall and $1 trillion infrastructure plan, just to name a few. Now Democrats and some in his own party asking how he'll pay for it all. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Bowling. We'll get to our Cashin crew in a few minutes. But first, to my chat with the guy our president tapped to figure all this out, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney. Director Mulvaney, ironically, Democrats are all of a sudden worried about our debt when it comes to this president's agenda. Do you see a little hypocrisy there?
I'll file it under better late than never. I'm just as concerned about the deficit. I'm glad I'm not the only one, but it's nice to have the Democrats along for the ride this time around. And I hope they keep that focus during the entire budget process.
Okay. Director, President Trump ran on cutting useless spending, some waste and useless spending. Give us a little update on where you stand on that.
Sure, we're going through that process right now. OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, has identified what we think to be the most wasteful programs, the most duplicative programs, programs that are simply ineffective, and we're sharing that information with the various agencies as we work with them to try and get the spending numbers down to where we need them to be in order to provide that $54 billion of additional spending for defense. So we go through that process here the next week, and by the 16th of March, we'll be able to roll out the full spending budget.
Yeah, so you mentioned that defense, the military increase of $54 billion, the 10% increase, which is substantial. That's a good number. Shockingly, there was Senator John McCain pushed back on that. What's going on here? There's some folks who think it's too much. There's Senator McCain and a few others who think it's not enough. I refer to it as sort of the Goldilocks number. It seems to be right in the middle. But more importantly, it is exactly and precisely the amount of money that it would have taken to end the military sequester. If we did not have the military sequester, $603 billion is where the top line defense number would be. That's what the president campaigned on. That's what he won on. So that's what we're giving him in his first budget. All right, I have the director of the Office of Management Budgets here. I have a whole list of questions. I'm trying to get to all of them with the amount of time I have. Director,
as long as your heater stays on, Eric, we'll be fine.
I'm
freezing cold.
As long as they give me on air is what I'm trying to say, Director. So the markets, they've been on fire since the election. The stock market, the labor market, the housing market, in fact. And a lot of that has to do with the proposed tax cut, giving businesses and Americans more of their money. Where do we stand on that?
It does reflect the tax cuts, or at least the anticipation of them. We're working on that now. I have a meeting later on today here on Saturday to go over further work on that. But don't discount the value of the regulatory reforms at the same time. I think there's a lot more bang for the buck even there than there is in tax reform. There's also some really good academic literature on that same thing. So, yes, you're seeing the markets respond positively, but I don't think it's just because of the tax cuts. It's the regulatory reform and just the basic pro-business attitude, pro-growth attitude that this administration is bringing to Washington, D.C. So I think you're seeing the markets go up for a bunch of different reasons, all of them good.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that as a conservative. That's the things that we've been talking about for literally decades. But let's talk about the timing on it. With Obamacare repeal and replace, I guess, front and center right now, do tax cuts get put on the backside of that, or can they run concurrent?
Actually, the way that the rules on Capitol Hill work, because of the budget rules with reconciliation that probably bore most people to tears, the way it's set up right now is that the Obamacare repeal and replace has to go first, and then tax reform would come immediately after that.
Can't you change the rules?
The House and Senate can, but my guess is they don't have 60 votes in the Senate to do that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Maybe they can use a nuclear option in the Senate. Maybe harken back to Harry Reid and see how it feels when it's about the budgets, too. Let's talk a little bit about this $2 or $3 trillion in money that corporations have overseas. Mr. Trump has said, let's repatriate that money with a certain percentage of it going to a tax. Where do we stand on that, and how much are you guys looking at?
Yeah, I know that the president has met with probably upwards of several dozen, if not many, many more than that, CEOs in his first month in office. I know that Gary Cohn, the head of the NEC, has been doing the same thing as well as we try and get commitments from those corporations to move money back from overseas. I think they made tremendous progress on that. I don't want to speculate as the exact dollar amount that would come back, but we're comfortable that it's in the trillions of dollars.
Yeah, no doubt about the dollar amount. I'm talking about what sort of fee. I mean, years ago I proposed an idea that said let corporations bring the money back at free, no tax at all, but earmark a certain percentage of the money they bring back towards capital investment and hiring, and that in itself would be a stimulus plan.
It would be. We're also looking at it in terms of, part and parcel of maybe an infrastructure plan has been floated on the Hill in the past. I think right now it's fair to say what we're looking for is the sweet spot, which is that tax rate that gets the most amount of money to come back, but also allows us the most money to invest in certain capital projects, including infrastructure. So that's an ongoing negotiation right now. Again, when you step back and ask your question again about the order of things, I think you go back to Obamacare repeal and replace going first, then tax reform, and then infrastructure.
Okay, and then there's this other issue here as well, is the border. The southern border, Mr. Trump campaigned on building a wall. He says the wall is going to be built. There's some questions: who's going to pay for it? Are Mexico going to pay for it? Are we? If, in fact, we pay for it first and they pay us back, what is the mechanism?
Well, I'm not familiar with the mechanism by which Mexico might pay it back to us. That's being handled outside of the Office of Management and Budget. What we're working on right now is figuring out a way to save money elsewhere in the 2017 budget. We're actually in the middle of fiscal year 2017 right now, so that we can start the wall this year. I think you're going to see that. In fact, I know you're going to see that. And then also set aside money in the 2018 budget to continue that construction.
Mm-hmm. What are the border fee, the border import fee? Where do we stand on that? There have been a couple of ideas floated. One of them was a straight fee coming in. Another one was a reciprocal fee. In other words, if we do trade with, say, Mexico or Brazil, whatever they charge us to export our goods into their country, we charge them the same rate back. Do we have any sort of plan yet? What's being floated?
What you've got is a variety of plans, that doesn't really bother me because we're still fairly early in the process of getting tax reform. I know that the House has a plan with full border adjustment. The Senate doesn't like it. The White House is looking at both of those plans and other plans as well. OMB is involved in that. So I've seen a couple different proposals. I'm not really at liberty to tell you what we think is Plan A, Plan B, or Plan C at this time. But I had 4 meetings on tax reform this week in addition to the Obamacare meetings and my meetings on budget. So it's been a busy week. Suffice to say this. The White House, this administration, is not waiting on any of these things. We are working on these items every single day, and we do hope to have a specific tax proposal available in the next few weeks.
Director, one more last question before I let you go. We spent about $43 billion in foreign aid. Is some of that aid earmarked for maybe cutting back and maybe paying for some of the things like military spending?
A lot of it is. In fact, that's probably the most, the budget item that you could tie most directly to what the president said when he ran for office. We are going to propose to reduce foreign aid, and we are going to propose to spend that money here. So I think some of the proposals you'll see by March 16th will be some fairly dramatic reductions in foreign aid.
Any specific locations, countries that will be looking at cuts?
Well, a lot of our foreign aid doesn't necessarily get targeted to a specific country. So when we talk about changing a particular aid program, it may have impact in various different nations. But that overriding message is fairly straightforward, which is less money spent on folks overseas, more money spent on folks back home.
I got to tell you, Mick Mulvaney, great to have you on. I appreciate your time cashing in. Looks forward to having you on again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much.